Did a duke ever truly understand the cost of ambition? Was victory ever truly sweet when soaked in the blood of rivals? And could a kingdom ever be built on a foundation of shattered alliances and whispered betrayals? The air in Sicily hung thick with the scent of salt and something else, a brittle metallic tang that spoke of countless raids and stolen treasures. Roger Hauteville, the youngest of the brothers, wasn't a man for grand pronouncements or sweeping gestures. He preferred the quiet thrill of a swift raid, the glint of steel, and the satisfying weight of a chest overflowing with silver. For years he'd spent carving a bloody swathe through the island, establishing a foothold that felt both precarious and exhilarating. He'd won victories at Castrogiovanni and Cerami, names that now echoed with the clang of battle and the cries of the vanquished. He'd amassed a small, fiercely loyal band of knights, hardened veterans who'd seen more bloodshed than most men saw sunrises, and a treasury that, while modest, was growing steadily. Palermo, the glittering heart of Sicily, remained tantalizingly out of reach, a shimmering prize guarded by a sea of Muslim warriors and a court steeped in ancient traditions. But Roger wasn't one to shy away from a challenge. He knew with a chilling certainty that he needed Robert, his older brother, to truly claim the island. Meanwhile, across the narrow Adriatic in the rain-slicked hills of Apulia, a different kind of storm was brewing. Robert Hauteville was wrestling with a hydra of rebellious barons, a tangle of disgruntled nobles who'd grown weary of the Hauteville's demands and the shadow of Guiscard's looming power. It wasn't a simple matter of asserting authority, it was a war of attrition, a slow, grinding struggle for control. The Byzantines, ancient rivals and opportunistic allies, were feeding the flames of rebellion, subtly, expertly from their base in Durazzo. Perennos, a shadowy figure pulling the strings from Constantinople, wasn't offering troops, he was offering discontent, a carefully cultivated sense of grievance that exploited the barons' simmering resentments. The empire, preoccupied with a far more immediate threat from the Seljuk Turks in Anatolia, couldn't spare the resources to intervene directly. Henry IV, the young, uncertain king of the West, offered only lukewarm political support, a gesture of solidarity as distant and meaningless as the rain falling on the Adriatic. The barons, a collection of formidable landowners, were united only in their desire for autonomy, a yearning for the egalitarian days of the early Norman settlement. Abelard, the nominal leader, was a man haunted by the loss of his family's inheritance, a victim of Guiscard's ruthless ambition. His supporters, Robert of Montescaglioso, Ami of Giovinazzo, Roger Hauteville, were a tangled web of kinship and rivalry, each harboring their own grievances against the Hautevilles. Jocelyn of Molfetta, a knight who'd earned Robert's enmity for restraining him in a drunken brawl, was a particularly venomous thorn in the Hauteville side. The revolt began with a brazen assault on Matera, a strategic stronghold that ignited a wave of raiding and pillaging across the Hauteville territories. The Byzantines, sensing an opportunity, bolstered the rebels with a new, energetic mercenary commander, Abulcaire, who arrived in Bari with a fresh army and a grim determination to restore Byzantine influence in Italy. The situation in Bari, a once peaceful port city, deteriorated rapidly. The treaty with the Normans crumbled as the Byzantine commune, emboldened by the revolt, began supplying arms and troops to the resurgent Byzantine cause. Robert, caught between the demands of Sicily and the chaos in Apulia, found himself stretched thin, forced to quell a separate revolt in Calabria. The town of Aiello, fueled by local grievances, rose up in defiance, demanding autonomy and threatening to disrupt Robert's supply lines. It took months to subdue the rebellion, a costly and time-consuming process that drained his resources and tested his patience. Then, Guiscard arrived. Not with a grand army, but with a carefully calculated strategy. He bypassed the rebellious barons, recognizing their disunity and their dependence on Byzantine support. Instead, he turned his attention to the Byzantines, launching a daring expedition across the Adriatic to Durazzo, Perennos' headquarters. The Calabrian cities, eager for plunder and a chance to prove their loyalty, rallied to his cause, providing ships and sailors for the audacious undertaking. Geoffrey of Taranto, a distant nephew of Guiscard's rival Ami, was appointed to command the fleet, a surprising choice, considering his recent successes in capturing Otranto, Mottola, and Taranto from the Byzantines. Robert's gamble in Sicily had been a calculated one, a slow, methodical accumulation of wealth and power. He'd built up strength through raids and pillaging expeditions, establishing a reputation for ruthlessness and efficiency. But the island was a viper's nest, a tangled web of alliances and betrayals. The Muslim populations, fragmented and fiercely independent, resisted every attempt to subjugate them. Palermo, the glittering capital, remained a fortress, its walls bristling with defenders, its streets teeming with spies and assassins. Meanwhile in Apulia, Guiscard's expedition faltered. The Durazzo campaign, intended to cripple the Byzantine presence in Italy, ended in a humiliating defeat. Mabricas, the Byzantine admiral, launched a counterattack, bringing a substantial force of Varangian Guard soldiers to Bari. Brindisi and Taranto fell to the Byzantines, and Castellaneta and Conversano were seized by dissident barons eager to align themselves with the restored Byzantine power. But the tide was turning. Constantinople, reeling from the death of Emperor Constantine and plunged into a period of political chaos, abandoned its Italian expedition. The Seljuk Turks, emboldened by the Byzantine weakness, continued their relentless advance into Anatolia, diverting resources and attention away from the Italian front. Robert, sensing the shift in momentum, seized the opportunity to launch a renewed offensive against his rebellious barons. The last major baron to fall was Geoffrey of Conversano, a man who'd refused to provide his feudal obligations and even handed over his stronghold of Montepeloso to the enemy. His surrender marked the effective collapse of the revolt. Guiscard, having secured his position in Italy, turned his attention back to Sicily, where he found a vastly different landscape. The Norman raids, once a constant threat, had become a predictable nuisance, accepted as a necessary cost of doing business. The Muslim populations, exhausted by years of conflict, were increasingly willing to pay tribute in exchange for peace. Roger, watching the events unfold from Palermo, felt a surge of cautious optimism. The Battle of Menzel el Amir had shattered the Byzantine hopes of regaining control of Sicily, and the Muslim factions were consumed by internecine warfare. The Zirid faction, weakened by internal divisions and facing growing popular unrest, was on the verge of collapse. Aiello, desperate to consolidate his power, launched a desperate gamble, leading a massive army out of Palermo in the summer of 1068. The battle was swift and brutal. Roger, outnumbered but not outmatched, met Aiello's forces at Menzel el Amir, a small village just 10 miles southeast of Palermo. The Normans, bolstered by their superior cavalry and their intimate knowledge of the terrain, routed the Muslim army in a stunning victory. Roger, displaying a chilling disregard for human life, sent back to Palermo a gruesome spectacle, a collection of Muslim corpses, their bodies adorned with the blood of their fallen comrades. The message was clear: resistance was futile. The victory at Menzel el Amir effectively sealed the fate of the Zirid faction. Aiello, demoralized and defeated, retreated to Mahdia, abandoning his ambitions of ruling Sicily. The other Muslim leaders, recognizing the hopelessness of their situation, followed suit. Guiscard, having secured his position in Italy, could finally turn his attention back to Sicily. The Hauteville brothers, reunited at last, stood on the precipice of a new era. Roger, having secured his foothold on the island, was poised to expand his borders and fatten his treasury through raiding and pillaging. Robert, having crushed the rebellion in Apulia, could now focus on consolidating his power in Italy. But the victory came at a price measured in blood, betrayal, and shattered alliances. Guiscard, a man known for his ruthlessness and his unwavering ambition, would not tolerate dissent. Jocelyn and Roger Talbouf, the two most vocal critics of his rule, were stripped of their possessions and exiled to Constantinople, a fate worse than death for a Norman knight. Abelard, despite his past transgressions, was spared a similar fate, but his freedom was conditional. He must renew his oaths of fealty and pledge his loyalty to the Hauteville brothers. As the sun set over Palermo, casting long shadows across the ancient city, Roger stood on the ramparts of the castle, surveying his domain. Sicily was his now, a glittering prize won through bloodshed and cunning. But he knew that the conquest was far from complete. The Muslim population remained a formidable obstacle, their traditions and their fierce independence a constant challenge. And the shadow of Guiscard loomed large, a reminder that even in victory, there was always the threat of betrayal and retribution. Did a duke ever truly understand the cost of ambition? The air in Sicily still carried that brittle, metallic tang, a constant reminder of the battles fought and the lives lost. Palermo, once a symbol of Muslim glory, was now a Norman stronghold, its streets echoing with the clang of swords and the shouts of soldiers. But beneath the veneer of order and prosperity, the seeds of future conflict were already being sown. The Norman presence had irrevocably altered the island's landscape, its culture, and its destiny. And as Roger Hauteville gazed out at the shimmering sea, he knew that the story of Sicily was far from over. Was victory ever truly sweet when soaked in the blood of rivals?